It is a hot Saturday afternoon in mid-May. The driveway is burning. Your shirt is soaked, and you are pulling a heavy, colorful bag from the trunk after a trip to the big home improvement store. You paid $60 for it. The front shows a perfect golf course lawn. The back has charts, numbers, and promises you barely understand, but still believe. Soon, you will pour it into a plastic spreader and push it across the yard, trusting that company to know what your soil needs. But here is the secret garden centers. Hope you never learn. Your lawn cannot read labels. Grass does not care about brands. It only wants one cheap element farmers have known already for years. My name is Daniel Yoder. I am Amish. I live on a farm in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, working the exact same acreage my grandfather cleared, and his father before him. We do not have golf course lawns out here. We have pastures, we have crop fields, and we have the yards around our farmhouses, where my wife tends her vegetable gardens and my children run barefoot in the long summer evenings. We understand soil because we have to. If we do not understand the dirt beneath our boots, our crops fail, our animals suffer, and we do not eat. It is as simple and as unforgiving as that. Today I am going to tell you exactly how to get that deep, dark green lawn you are looking for about $2 a yard. I am going to tell you what the farmers buy at the feed store and how to use it. But more importantly, because honesty is worth more to me than sounding clever, I am going to tell you the hard truth about the dangers that the $60 bag does not warn you about. I am going to address the foolish half-truths that people spread on the internet about lawn care. And I am going to tell you how, if you listen to the internet without understanding the science of the earth, you might actually be turning your own soil into a toxic graveyard. I am not trying to sell you a monthly lawn subscription. I am not selling a brand. I am giving you the knowledge that belongs to anyone willing to listen. Stay with me, because if you get this wrong, you will burn your yard to a crisp in a single afternoon, and you will have no one to blame but yourself. Let us start with the $60 bag and the green color you are chasing. The absolute secret to that color is nitrogen. If you look at any fertilizer bag, whether it is cheap or expensive, you will see 3 numbers printed on it. It might say 3004 or maybe 1648. Those numbers stand for nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, always in that exact order. Phosphorus is for root growth and seed development. Potassium is for overall health, stress tolerance, and winter survival. But the first number, the nitrogen, that is the engine. That is the fuel that drives the green color and the rapid top growth. When a lawn looks pale, yellow, tired, and hungry, it is starving for nitrogen. So, if nitrogen is all you need for the green, what is the cheapest way to put it on the ground? The answer has been sitting on the concrete floors of agricultural supply stores and feed mills for 100 years. It is a plain, heavy paper sack of a raw powder called ammonium sulfate. The bag reads 2100. That means it is 21% pure nitrogen, with a bonus of 24% sulfur riding along with it, which we will talk about in a few minutes, because it is incredibly important. A 50-pound bag of ammonium sulfate runs about $26 at my local feed store. At the standard agricultural application rate, that one single bag will feed 10,000 square feet of earth. If you live in a standard American suburb, your front yard is probably around 1,000, maybe 2,000 square feet. Do the math. You are spending roughly $2 to feed 1,000 square feet of grass. The exact same patch of grass, fed with the $60 premium branded bag from the big box store, is costing you $15, $20, sometimes $30 a treatment. It is the identical nitrogen. It produces the identical green. The grass cannot tell the difference, because chemically, physically, biologically, there is no difference to tell. So, you are a smart man, and you might be asking, Daniel, what is the extra $58 buying me? I believe in being fair, so I will give you the honest answer. It is not a complete scam. What you are paying for is a coating. The premium bags use what they call slow-release nitrogen. The manufacturers take the raw nitrogen granules and wrap them in a tiny shell of polymer plastic or sulfur. When it rains, or when the morning dew settles, that shell breaks down very slowly, releasing a tiny bit of food over 6 or 8 weeks. That coating offers you a genuine convenience. It means you can be careless. You can fill your spreader, dump it on your lawn on a dry afternoon. Forget to water it, go inside, sit in your air conditioning, watch the television, and your lawn will not die. What you are paying the premium price for is forgiveness. You are paying for the freedom to not pay attention to your land. I call it an ignorance tax. It is a tax you pay to the chemical companies because you do not want to take the time to understand the raw materials yourself. Ammonium sulfate is raw. It is quick release. It does not have a fancy plastic shell. It hits the soil, and it works immediately. It will turn a yellow lawn dark green in a matter of days. But it demands respect. It asks one thing of you, in return for saving you $58. And if you disobey this rule, the cheap powder will punish you severely. The first rule is this: you must water it in immediately. Ammonium sulfate has what agronomists call a high salt index. It sits at a 69 on that scale, which is very high. That means it is aggressively thirsty. If you spread raw ammonium sulfate on your lawn on a hot, dry afternoon, and you put your spreader away and go inside, those raw salt granules will sit on the delicate grass blades and pull the moisture straight out of the plant through a process called osmosis. Within 2 hours, your grass will start to turn a sickly gray. By the next morning, you will have brown, scorched streaks across your entire yard that look like somebody took a blowtorch to the earth. I had an Englisher neighbor a few miles down the road who asked me about my pastures once. I told him about ammonium sulfate. He went and bought a bag, spread it at high noon in July, and left it. 3 days later, he came driving up my lane, furious, his face red, telling me I had told him to poison his yard. I walked down to his property, looked at the brown burn marks, perfectly matching the tire tracks of his push spreader, and I asked him what time. He turned his sprinklers on. He looked at me blankly and said he figured he would wait for the rain that the weatherman forecast for the weekend. Nature does not wait for the weatherman. Nature does not wait for the weekend. When you use the raw powder, you fill your hand spreader. You walk your 1,000 square feet, and within the hour, you turn your water on. You soak it deep. You give it enough water to wash every grain of that salt off the green blades and push it down into the dark soil, where the roots are waiting to drink it up. You do that, and there is no burn. There is only a deep, explosive green. But now I have to stop, and I have to tell you the part that makes this complicated. Because being honest is worth more to me than sounding like a man with a magic trick. When you put advice out into the world, people write back. They leave comments, and a man who refuses to listen to the hard-earned wisdom of others is a stubborn fool. I read the comments folks leave, and I cross-check them against what the university extension offices say. And 2 things must be said about this raw nitrogen powder, because they are a matter of life and death for your soil. The first warning is about greed. A fellow wrote to me not long ago, a man who said he had 30 years of experience rescuing damaged lawns. He was angry. He said that pushing fast-release nitrogen onto a lawn in the heat of summer is a terrible idea, because it forces top growth at the expense of root growth, and it invites disease. I will tell you plainly, he is absolutely right, and the agricultural scientists at places like Purdue and North Carolina State agree with him. You need to hear this. Think about how you raise a child, or a puppy, or a calf. If you pump a young animal full of pure sugar and growth hormones, it will get big fast. But its bones will be weak, its immune system will be fragile, and the first time a cold wind blows, it will fall sick. Grass is a living thing, and the exact same rules of God's creation apply to it. When you dump a heavy load of quick-release nitrogen on a lawn, the grass panics. It throws all of its energy into shooting green blades up toward the sun. It grows so fast that you have to mow it twice a week. But beneath the soil, the roots are starving. The plant has abandoned its foundation to build the roof. Those fast-growing blades of grass have cell walls that are paper-thin, weak, and bloated with water. In the heat of a July night, when the humidity sits heavy on the ground and the air is still, that weak, bloated grass becomes a feast for fungi. Diseases with names like Pythium blight, brown patch, and rhizoctonia sweep through a chemically pushed lawn like wildfire. Because the grass has no immune system left, the fungus eats it alive. You wake up one morning, and whole circles of your yard are rotting, turning orange, and dying. So what is the Amish answer to this? Do we throw away the ammonium sulfate? No, the tool is not evil. The greed of the man using it is the problem. The answer is restraint. Less is more. The premium bags tell you to dump 4 or 5 pounds of fertilizer over your yard because they want you to empty the bag and go back to the store to buy another one. I am telling you to use a fraction of that. When you use ammonium sulfate, you use maybe half a pound of it for every 100 square feet. That is a dusting. It is a whisper of food, not a Thanksgiving feast. You feed it gently, maybe once when the spring wakes up, and once in the late summer as the heat breaks. You never ever push fast nitrogen during the peak heat of summer. Do not force the earth to outpace its own foundation. The second warning I must share with you is even more serious, because it is something the internet experts deliberately hide from you. Another fellow left a comment and said he used a nitrogen powder just like this. He said, for 2 weeks, his lawn was the most beautiful on the block. And 2 months later, every blade of grass was dead. He tested his dirt and found out his soil had become a toxic acid bath. He is right too. And this brings us back to that 24% sulfur I mentioned earlier, riding along in the bag. When you put ammonium sulfate into the ground, the bacteria in the soil go to work eating the ammonium to turn it into nitrates, which the grass roots can actually drink. As they do this chemical conversion, they release hydrogen ions into the earth. Hydrogen is what makes acid. Over time, ammonium sulfate drives the pH of your soil straight down. It is one of the most highly acidifying fertilizers on the planet. If you live out west, in places where the soil is hard and alkaline, like chalk or limestone, this is a miracle. The sulfur breaks down the alkaline earth, lowers the pH, and unlocks the iron that is trapped in the dirt, making your grass dark green, without you having to buy expensive iron supplements. But if you live in the east or down in the southeast, places like the Florida Panhandle, South Jersey, or Mississippi, your soil is likely already acidic. It is born from pine needles, heavy rains, and ancient forests. If you take an already acidic soil and you dump heavy loads of ammonium sulfate on it year after year, the pH drops from a healthy 6.5 down to a 5.0 or a 4.5. At that level of acid, the soil undergoes a terrible, invisible change. According to the agronomists at Penn State, a metal called aluminum, which sits harmlessly locked up in most dirt, suddenly dissolves into the soil water when the acid gets too high. Dissolved aluminum is highly toxic to grass roots. It burns the tips of the roots, shrivels them up, and suffocates the plant from the bottom up. Your grass turns yellow. Because you do not know any better, you think it needs more fertilizer. So you dump more ammonium sulfate on it, you create more acid, you release more aluminum, and you accelerate the death of your own yard. This is the knowledge the big box store does not give you. But it is the knowledge my grandfather gave my father, and my father gave me. You must know your soil. you must know where you live. If you live in an area with acidic soil and you want to use the $2 fertilizer trick, you must do what the old farmers have done for centuries. You must balance the ledger. Every few years you go to the store and you buy a heavy bag of agricultural lime, pulverized limestone. It costs about $6 a bag. In the late fall or the early spring, you spread that chalky white dust over your lawn. The calcium carbonate in the lime neutralizes the acid from the fertilizer. It raises the peach back to the sweet spot where the roots can breathe, the aluminum is locked away safely, and the worms can thrive. I remember walking behind my grandfather as a boy, watching the white dust of the lime fly out of the back of the tractor over the hay fields. He used to say, "The earth is like a checking account, Daniel. You cannot just write checks all year. Eventually, you have to make a deposit, or the bank closes your account. Lime is the deposit, balance is the rule." Now, because I am talking about honesty, I need to take a moment to address the absolute foolishness that gets passed around on the internet. My brother runs a hardware and farm supply store in town, and he comes over for supper on Sundays. He sits at my kitchen table and tells me the things the Englishers come in asking for based on videos they watched on their phones. It would be funny if it were not so sad. There is a myth going around that if you want a dark green lawn, you should go to the pharmacy, buy a box of Epsom salts, dissolve it in a garden sprayer, and spray your yard. Millions of people have watched videos telling them to do this. They swear by it. Listen to me. Epsom salt is magnesium sulfate. That is all it is. The scientists at Washington State University and North Dakota State have tested this to death. Magnesium only greens up a lawn if the soil is actively suffering from a severe magnesium deficiency. And unless you live on a pure sand dune, your soil already has more magnesium than your grass will ever use in 10 lifetimes. When you dissolve Epsom salts and spray it on a healthy lawn, it does absolutely nothing for the color. But it does do something worse beneath the surface. Magnesium and calcium are like two men trying to walk through a single narrow doorway at the exact same time. They compete for space in the plant's roots. If you flood your soil with excess magnesium from a pharmacy box, you block the roots from absorbing calcium. The cell walls of your grass become weak. You are paying money to perform a parlor trick that actively harms the structural integrity of your lawn. My mother used to keep a box of Epsom salts under the bathroom sink. After a long day of canning tomatoes or standing on the hard kitchen floor, she would fill a tin basin with warm water, pour in the Epsom salts, and soak her tired feet. It was good for that. Save the Epsom salts for your aching feet. Keep it off your land. And while we are speaking of things you should keep off your land, let us talk about the true Amish way. I have told you how to use the raw, cheap powder. I have told you how to water it, how to avoid disease, and how to lime your soil to prevent an acid death. But if you want to know how my family actually keeps our lands green and fertile before the chemical companies existed, it has nothing to do with bags from a store. The obsession with a perfect uniform monoculture carpet of Kentucky bluegrass is an English invention. It is an unnatural state. Nature hates a monoculture. When you try to force a single species of plant to grow in a perfectly flat mat, nature will fight you every single day. It will send weeds, it will send grubs, it will send drought. And the chemical companies stand there laughing, handing you a different expensive bottle to fight each of nature's corrections. If you walk out into my pasture or the yard around my farmhouse, you will not see a perfect golf course. You will see grass, yes, but mixed in with it. Everywhere, you will see the white flowers and the three-lobed leaves of white clover. For the first half of the 20th century, clover was considered an essential part of any good lawn seed mix. It was deliberately planted by every homeowner in America. It was only when the chemical companies invented broadleaf herbicides to kill dandelions in the 1950s. That they realized their poison also killed clover. So, what did they do? They hired marketing men to convince the American public that clover was a weed. They convinced your fathers and your grandfathers to hate a plant that was keeping their soil alive, just so they could sell them poison in a plastic jug. Clover is a miracle. It is a legume. Beneath the soil, on the roots of the clover plant, there are tiny little bumps called nodules. Inside those nodules live a specific type of bacteria called rhizobium. The air that you and I breathe is 78% nitrogen, but grass cannot breathe it. Grass can only eat nitrogen through the soil. The bacteria on the clover roots pull the nitrogen straight out of the sky, turn it into physical fertilizer, and push it out into the surrounding dirt. If you let clover grow in your lawn, it feeds the grass around it, for free, 24 hours a day. It has deep roots that stay green, in the middle of an August drought, when the rest of the grass turns brown. It produces flowers that feed the honeybees. My family keeps in the orchard. It requires no bags, no spreaders, no watering schedules, and no ignorance tax. When my grandfather taught me how to care for the yard, he told me to do 3 things. First, let the clover grow. Second, set the wheels on the lawnmower as high as they will go. Most men cut their grass so short, it looks like a military haircut. They scalp it. When grass is cut short, the sun bakes the soil, the water evaporates instantly, and the shallow roots die of thirst. If you raise your mower deck to 3 or 4 inches, the tall grass shades the soil like an umbrella. The earth stays cool, the moisture stays trapped, and the roots dig deep to survive the heat. And the third thing he taught me was to use compost. Not synthetic powder, but real living compost. Once a year, we take a thin layer of composted manure and rotted leaves, and we spread it over the yard. It is not just about the nitrogen. It is about the life. A handful of good compost contains more living microorganisms than there are people on the face of the earth. When you put that onto your lawn, you are bringing in an army of workers who break down dead thatch, fight off the fungal diseases, and cycle the nutrients so the grass can eat. If you want to do one trick that actually works, a real trick, not internet garbage, go to the grocery store and buy a jar of plain, blackstrap molasses. When you are watering your lawn, or if you ever do, decide to spray a compost tea, mix a cup of molasses into the water. Molasses is pure liquid carbon. It is sugar. The grass does not care about it, but the bacteria in the soil will throw a feast. They will consume the sugar, multiply by the billions, and turn your dirt into a living, breathing engine. It costs a few dollars a year, and it works with nature instead of fighting it. I understand that many of you cannot just let your front yard turn into a wild pasture. I understand that the homeowners association, or the culture of your neighborhood, demands a neat green lawn. You have to live at peace with your neighbors, and a man must keep his property respectable. But you do not have to be a victim to the system that profits off your desire to have a nice home. You have a choice. You can be the man who drives to the big box store every spring and fall, who drops hundreds of dollars on bags of synthetic polymer-coated pellets. You can be the man who blindly pours acid on his soil without knowing the P, who pushes his grass to grow too fast, and then pays another company to come and spray fungicides to fix the disease he caused himself. You can pay the ignorance tax, month after month, year after year, letting corporations manage the ground your children play on. Or you can take a step back and remember what the men who built this country knew. You can buy the raw materials. You can pay $2 for a bag of agricultural nitrogen and take the responsibility of watering it in yourself. You can practice restraint, applying it gently so you do not invite disease. You can take a mason jar, scoop up some of your own dirt, send it to your local university extension office for $10, and find out exactly what your land needs. You can buy a bag of lime and balance the ledger. You can raise your mower deck. You can let a little clover live. A man who understands the dirt beneath his boots is a man who cannot be easily fooled. He is a man who keeps his money in his own pocket, who protects his local environment, and who respects the natural balance that God put into the earth. He is a man who takes care of his own and needs no corporation's permission to do it. This weekend, I am not asking you to go out and buy ammonium sulfate. I am asking you to go outside, walk your property, kneel down in your yard, and take a look at the soil. Take a smell of it. Look for the clover. Look for the worms. Look past the green blades and see the foundation. And then tell me in the comments below. I read every single one of these, because the stories you bring from your own homes are why I keep doing this. What state do you live in? Is your soil hard and alkaline, or is it acidic pine country? Have you ever had your dirt tested, or have the garden centers kept you buying fertilizer without ever telling you to fix the foundation with a bag of lime? Tell me what you see in your own yard. Next time I am going to show you how my family keeps the vegetable harvest fresh in the root cellar for 6 months without a refrigerator, using nothing but sand and the ambient temperature of the earth. It is a piece of knowledge that was almost lost, but it still works perfectly today. Until then, remember that nature has its own pace. Do not force it. Do not buy the expensive lie. Stay watchful. Stay self-reliant. And remember that the people who built this country with their own hands knew things that we are only just beginning to remember.